thank you everyone for joining. And let me move this, got it out. And I'm assuming you can all see my screen up here.
Yes.
Favorite
Looks
question.
good.
Perfect. Well, Trisha Toffey is my name. Thanks, Abby, for the introduction. I'm a senior transformation consultant based largely in global learning and development initiatives. And I've been at CoachHub for over 2 years now, celebrated my 1 year last week. And what I've learned in the last 2 years since I've been helping people integrate digital coaching into new and existing development programs is that we've seen some really amazing results around engagement and retention and reducing burnout. So I'm super excited to kind of talk about how we can shake up, is the language we're using, shake up employee engagement for 2023 with digital coaching. So if you only walk away with 3 things today, it should be these. Number 1, there are business and personal benefits to well-being. Number 2, lacking well-being is not good for the business. And number 3, coaching can help. So let's imagine your employees are icebergs, naturally. What we see from them, their behaviors, what and how they communicate and the work they're producing are at the top of the iceberg up here. And the observable things that are going on is everything we can see up there. And what do you think is going on below the surface? What do you think is guiding their behavior, how they communicate, what the quality of their work is? So if you think about that, there are a million different answers to that question. It could be their beliefs and their values guiding them. It could be their well-being, their mental, physical, and emotional health, their stress levels, their motivation, and a million other things. And all of these factors down below the iceberg have an impact on what you're seeing at the tip of the iceberg on top. So I do really encourage you to think about what your organizations are doing to support these underlying well-being factors in order to not only optimize the performance, but to also support their growth and thriving as individuals. So what does well-being even mean? I'd like you all to come off of mute and share any keywords or key phrases that come to mind for you when you think about what well-being actually is. Do any of you have any thoughts on this?
Well-being. This is Brenda. Well-being means to me balance of physical and mental balance, I guess. Taking care of my mental health and physical health.
Balance, love it.
Kind of like along that point, comfort, like not feeling uncomfortable by situations, whether that be a little bit of uncomfort or a lot of uncomfort. When well-being's off, that can fluctuate.
We're taking a much as broad of a scope or a lens on well-being as we possibly can. It could be financial well-being. It could be the family well-being. Is it my community well-being? How well is my community? How is it? What kind of cognitive load am I bringing to work with me because of all these extraneous factors? What's the economy like, and what's it doing to me? So to me, well-being used to be much simpler it wasn't simple then, but it was much simpler in 2015. And to me now, well-being is very, very complex, very, very multidimensional. So I don't know. I think this topic of well-being is going to be with us for a long, long time. I don't think we're going to reach the pinnacle of well-being. So the approaches that we use, I think, are going to be interesting. And let me tell you, I appreciate the box, because that was just like well-being in a box. Very, very ingenious, I would say, from your team.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Linda. Well-being, you used to think of it as just like one aspect, but it's the whole being of a person, whether they're at work, whether they're at home, the different states that it plays into it, because all of that has an impact on how we show up at work and how we perform at work. So if we're lacking in well-being at one area, that's going to impact, different areas of our life as well as our work life.
Yeah.
Good point, Emily.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing is that there is a lot of research on this. And I think it was Linda's point earlier, there's so many different facets. And this definition here is actually from the CDC's well-being page. presence of negative emotion or presence of positive emotions, absence of negative emotions, life satisfaction, fulfillment, and positive functioning. And these, again, have so many different things behind them, which could mean so many different things to each of us as well. So I love that it is really all encompassing and it is really holistic. And overall, it's meant to be that. It's not just, someone mentioned financial well-being and someone mentioned, there's so many different facets. So it does have so many different bottom line characteristics and traits within it. And of course, individuals with high levels of well-being are more productive at work, and they're also more likely to contribute to their communities and to their families and to what's important to them. And of course, there are also huge benefits from an organizational level. So you can read through these, but I wanted to tell you a story kind of about this higher engagement. A client of mine, they're a 25-year-old tech company, and they're going through major growth right now, and they're trying to engage their employees, but they're struggling to create this developmental path for them. And the L&D team that I work with, they've provided them pretty much every possible opportunity they could for development, LinkedIn Learning and conference budget, general professional development budget. They've got keynote speakers come in, they've got mentorship programs, and people were not really feeling like those were beneficial and they weren't using them. So they decided to work with CoachHub specifically to support their people leaders. So at any given time right now, they have 100 people leaders going through 6 months of coaching. And the cool part is that their people analytics department actually just did this huge employee engagement survey, and they surveyed the direct reports of people who are in coaching, and they found that the employees with managers who are in coaching were actually significantly more statistically significantly more engaged than the employees whose managers were not in coaching. So there's a whole lot that has to do with engagement here in well-being, and they do really go hand in hand to ultimately drive results for the business, which is important as well. One of the biggest barriers that we're seeing to well-being has been disclosure. So if you kind of think about this quiet quitting phenomenon, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, it's really engagement, it's well-being. And the reason why it came up as this new buzzword is because we're finally starting to talk about it. Someone mentioned earlier that, we're at the infancy of even talking about well-being, and it's not just going to end, it's going to keep evolving. And we're starting to talk more seriously about that and psychological safety. And there's so much opportunity for organizations and people leaders to truly engage with their folks in more of an authentic manner. And if there's no psychological safety or well-being, then you'll most likely never find out what's going wrong until we see the results in exit surveys and on Glassdoor and plastered on the internet. So that's something that we're seeing as a pretty big barrier. So how can we be more proactive in supporting our employees in an effective way? The good news is that companies here on the left, they're starting to realize that they do need to increase employee resources around well-being, but there's still a lot of work to do. And the bad news is that only 1 in 6 employees are feeling supported despite the efforts. So what's missing? Research is telling us that leaders are looking to answer that question, and they're looking to coaching for help. CoachHub actually recently, I don't know if you've seen it already, but we put out this huge global coaching buyers survey to many leaders globally, and over 25% of them say that they want coaching to help specifically with well-being, second only to leadership development, out of many different answers. So they are seeking coaching for specifically well-being. I just thought that was pretty impactful, thinking about what we can actually do about it, because there is a lot out there that people have had. And research also shows impactful results between well-being and performance. So another little story here, my coach actually assigned me, I have coaching because I work with CoachHub all the time. I have a coach, we work together on a weekly basis. So last week, my coach assigned me an article from HBR on uncovering authentic leadership styles. And there was another big survey a while back that HBR did. I think there were like 14,000 participants in the survey, and they tried to uncover what the most important trait of a good leader was. So does anyone want to guess what that trait or characteristic was of a good leader?
I know, otherwise I'd guess.
I'll take a guess and say empathy.
Empathy, that's on the list.
That was going to be my guess too.
Authentic in the chat.
Authentic. Well, spoiler alert, it's actually self-awareness. So in this one particular study, and this is, I'm sure all those things are a huge piece of it, but it's actually self-awareness was the top trait that makes a good leader in this study that HBR put out. And, I heard this story recently, another story about a participant, a CoachHub coachee that I wanted to share related to self-awareness as well. So someone who's actually gone through the coaching process with their organization. There was an attorney who left a law firm, joined an organization as internal counsel, got coaching through CoachHub provided to him through this other organization. And he uncovered through coaching that there was a huge need to shift his communication style, going from kind of this cutthroat law firm style to a different environment and culture within the new organization that really valued authenticity and empathy and inclusion more than the past experience that he was in. So through this reflection, his own reflection, he realized that in his personal life as well, he communicated differently with his own children among the sons and daughters. And that really trickles over, and I even get goosebumps sharing that story, but well-being can start anywhere, and it could be through coaching in the workplace. And then when you have that self-reflection ability, you're able to apply that to so many different parts of your life to make that holistic improvement to help you thrive. So if you're considering coaching, what's important is that it's an approach that's strengths-based, and it allows participants to really have the autonomy and control to dedicate their personal development horsepower to the areas that they want to, not really the areas that their boss says they need to do. So from the get-go, there's a base level of buy-in and psychological safety within the confidential coaching conversations, which can lead to a lot more usage and engagement and outcomes. And how CoachHub specifically can help? Well, it facilitates that growth and optimal functioning that we want to see happen beneath the surface of the iceberg, and it really helps people reach their full potential. And it can, coaching can help in areas such as increasing self-awareness, enhancing communication and collaboration, managing conflict, regulating emotions, and really developing strategies to manage stress and find a work-life balance, especially in these uncertain times that are probably also going to be uncertain forever. So the ask here today, as we kind of wrap up, or as I wrap up my part, is to actually just sip delicious, interesting cocktails. But I do also really encourage you to think about how you're supporting and shaking up your employee well-being. And please do, I know a lot of you are in conversations with us already, but please do continue the conversation with us and reach out. And I'm happy to send the articles that I mentioned as well. So that's about it. And I'm happy to talk through any questions. Otherwise, we can kick it over to the mixologist. Thank you.
I actually have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So the type of coaching that you guys are you doing it primarily with leaders in the organization, or are you doing it with teams where there's staff level as well?
All. So the reason CoachHub got started is because we wanted to be able to democratize coaching for employees at all levels. So it's meant to be scalable. A common use case for us is people leaders, but I also run with my clients high potential development programs, or even emerging leaders or new leaders. It really depends on where the best fit is in your organization. And that's something that we can also work together with our team of behavioral scientists to kind of think through where it does make the most sense. So it can be all.
Okay. And do you typically rely on like certain assessments to kind of get a baseline of where the person's at, or what does that look like?
Yep. So generally, we do have a couple customized processes that we can go through, but generally the first step of the process is a self-assessment. And then we're able to measure the development over time and report back to you on an aggregate level what the kind of deltas look like.
Gotcha. So are you guys with the, sorry, I know everyone wants to get to the mixologist. With the research that you guys have coming out on emotional intelligence, are you basing a lot of your assessments on how emotionally intelligent the people are that get started, or is that just kind of a portion of what you're assessing?
Yeah, that's a portion. So we've got a couple frameworks that we leverage that our team of behavioral scientists have come up with, and they're basically all behavioral science PhDs, neuroscientists, positive psychologists, and they leveraged research that's out there and have done their own. And they already have incorporated that into the self-assessment that we have created, and that can be refined. I don't think it's been refined yet, but I'm sure they're always working on making sure it's up to date with current research that's in the field.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. And we will have a little time in between shaking up our mixology drinks as well. But go ahead, Linda. Like you're gonna say something.
I know I'm blocking the mixologist too, because I really want that too. But I have a question about real life if you have any data about the tension between coaching be another thing that's weighting me down versus coaching as something that makes me feel good about me and my organization. So for instance, this week has been really pressured because it's post Thanksgiving COVID time. So now we have all these cases now of COVID because we all got together for Thanksgiving. And now I've had this huge number of workforce outages, right? So, and then the people that are at work are extra pressured. It's just a cascading effect of COVID times. So I was just curious if you had data about if people feel like coaching is what their emotions are around. Does it feel like another thing, or do they feel like it really helps that organization communicate that we see you and we're trying everything we can to support you? That tension.
I think Linda, Trish, I'll jump in here. I think a big way that can be influenced is how the organization positions coaching. So traditionally, coaching had been seen as something of a corrective step for people who need to fix something they're doing. Where we see my most engaged customers are clients who are positioning coaching as a tool to help get their high potential people to the next level. A way for people who are opting in, or for managers who are identifying people that they know will take to coaching and use it as an experience to grow and get better at what they do personally and professionally. And part of how we support that as well is we'll give insights from the coaches who are doing CoachHub. Are there any that are falling behind, not accessing the coaches as often as they should? How do we make sure those people are engaged? Additionally, we will do like onboarding webinars for the coachees so that they understand what is coaching. Get them excited about why they've been chosen to go through this process, what they're going to experience through this process. Let them know they might feel a little bit uncomfortable about it at times, but here's the end result of what they should see at the end of it. So it's definitely, if not deployed correctly, it can be something where people who aren't really in a good frame of mind to take to coaching, it can become burdensome. Or if it's not deployed in a way that makes it easy to have those sessions, but we try to make that process a little bit easier depending on the situation. And there are some times when maybe we shouldn't deploy coaching at whether it's during really busy times of the year or with a group of people who maybe aren't as apt to taking to it. I don't know. I know you all are doing coaching yourself, so you could probably relate to some of those things, but that's the biggest thing we see is just sort of how to frame that to make it as successful as possible.
And I'd add to that briefly that it's one of the only times of the week that I hear from my clients, coachees, is that it's 45 minutes that's completely confidential and it's dedicated to whatever they needed to focus on that week. And if they're struggling with the workload, maybe they just want to vent to someone in a safe space and talk through that. And they can also schedule it to meet the needs of their calendar. So maybe this week isn't the right week to have coaching. So maybe they can schedule 2 sessions next week instead. So it's kind of coachee driven in that sense.
Thanks. Bring on the mixologist.
There you go.
I'll make this my question then.
I'm sorry.
No, bring it up.
I just was really piqued, and my interest was piqued by the mention that you had about this global tech client that you had related to how you brought them in because they were struggling with development pathing, it sounds like. So we just got some of our survey results back for the year. There's a lot of desire from our employees to understand kind of where they don't seem to feel like they're very clear. It's very clear where they're going. So I think we need kind of like a two-pronged approach. We need to kind of almost change the perspective of our leaders to be more transparent in terms of, where and how they're rating their employees and why, and who gets the job and why, et cetera. And then also we need to give our employees a little bit of, some of those tools to help them develop and help them also be empowered to help carve their own paths, right? I think it's a two-way street where our leaders can give some tools and resources, but we as employees need to let them know where we want to go. So I'm just interested in learning more about that client. If you have some sort of deck that you can share, or if we could talk about it later, that would be great. But just wanted to call that out.
I'm happy to share more details afterwards. And I think too, the big piece was connecting the learning journey, because they had all these standalone things, but it was really, how do I weave this all together and talk? I can access all these things, but then how do I talk through that with someone and figure out what uniquely I want in my own development journey for all the people. So I can send you some more details on that as well.
Cool, thank you.
Now time for mixology.
I'm ready whenever you guys are. Okay.
Yeah,
No problem. I can do
mixology, and if you all do think of additional questions, we can make some time for that in between shakes of the drinks. So.
Yeah, I can do it. I can do it as fast as you guys need or as slow as you guys need. So don't worry about me. Not a problem at all. So let me do a little introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Alyssa. I go by the Badass Bartender. I'm located here in Phoenix, Arizona. I am originally from South Florida. I've been in Phoenix for about 2 years now. I started bartending about 10 years ago. I actually left my corporate job at the age of 27 and just decided to go work in a restaurant because it looked like fun, and was like, I'll just go do that until I figure it out. And I ended up falling in love with it, and I've been doing it ever since. So I've been really lucky enough to travel all over the country, doing, craft cocktail programs, bars, Michelin star, restaurant, hotels, all those kinds of things, even down to like your local pubs and sports bars. I've either worked at, helped at, or something. So I've really covered all of the spectrum when it comes to the hospitality industry. So now that I live in Phoenix, I work at a bar here in Phoenix. It's one of the oldest craft cocktail lounges. It's called Merc Bar. So if anyone's in Phoenix ever traveling or anything, please come in. I work there on the weekends, and then during the week, I run a social media called The Badass Bartender, where I do different recipes and tips and tricks and, just different fun things that are all related to bartending and craft cocktails. I do, and then I do these mixology classes, which I absolutely love doing, by the way. So that's a little bit about me. Let's get into those kits, because I know you guys are thirsty. So let's talk about first just what came in our kits, and then we'll talk about what else you guys will need to make the cocktails. So when you open your kits, these are the things that you should be seeing. You should have a little bottle of vodka. So we have 2 cocktails. Oh, and by the way, if at any point during the class you have a question, you need me to repeat myself, you need me to slow down, feel free to just yell it out, or you can put it in the chat. And I will, I have it right here, and I will try to get to it as soon as I can. Okay, so in the kits, we've got our 1 bottle of vodka. We've got our bottle of Sazerac rye for our old fashioned. And then we have our bitters. We also have some ginger beer, some cranberry juice, and then we should have some candy canes. This is going to be for one of our garnishes, a little stick of honey, and then we've got some orange and some cinnamon, some dehydrated herbs, and fruit right there. We're going to use this for a garnish. So we're doing 2 cocktails. We are going to do a cranberry old fashioned. We're going to do that one first. That's a nice sipping cocktail. And then at the end, we will do the mistletoe mule. Has anyone had a Moscow Mule? How many people love Moscow Mules? Lots of people. Yeah. What about old fashioned? A lot of old fashioned fans? Hands up too. Good. Yeah. Very classic cocktails. These are great holiday twists. These are easy to make, if you're having people over, if you're doing a little party, these are, just great cocktails to make and fun and festive. Okay. So the other things that you guys will need to make these cocktails, we're obviously going to need glassware. So I'm going to just use a regular rocks glass for my old fashioned. And then for my Moscow Mule, I'm going to use a Moscow Mule glass, but you guys can use any rocks glass, any glass that you guys have on hand will absolutely work. Okay, in your kits also, or you might just have a jigger. This is a nice measuring device that we use for cocktails. This larger side is 2 ounces, and then the smaller side is going to be 1 ounce. Now, the reason you want to measure your cocktails is because making cocktails is really more like baking than it is cooking. You're using very strong, potent ingredients in very small amounts. So just a little bit too much or not enough can really throw off the whole cocktail. And you want to be consistent, especially if you're making them for, guests at any point, people at your party or whatever. You want to make sure that you're making them all the same drinks. Okay, other thing that we will need is a cocktail shaker. This is a 2-piece shaker known as a Boston shaker. You'll see this mostly with professionals. And then you could also have something that looks like this. This is also known as a cobbler shaker. So, and a 3-piece shaker. So cobbler and 3-piece shaker. So this little top comes off right here. You got your strainer already built in, fill your cocktail in there, and there you have it. I do really like the Boston shakers though, even for people at home. Those cobbler shakers can get stuck and be a little bit of a hassle. So we are obviously going to need some ice because nobody wants a warm old fashioned. We are going to need some way of squeezing some citrus juice. Now this can be you can use a designated citrus juice squeezer. You can use some tongs, or if you just don't have anything, you want to use your hands, absolutely. You're the one drinking it. So it's not that big of a deal. Going to have a knife. We're going to cut our limes, give our mule a little bit of citrus. You might want to have a pair of scissors on hand. We are going to cut open the honey and the candy canes, and it can be a little bit difficult if you're just using a knife. Something else you're going to want to need, I believe you guys have the whole candy canes. They're not crushed yet. So if you have a mallet or some type of way of crushing them, that would be great. If you already have them crushed, perfect. You're one step ahead of us all. And then we are just going to need a spoon. So it can be a kitchen spoon, a bar spoon. You can use a chopstick, or, if really need be, you can use your finger. And then, I believe that is it. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Perfect. Okay. So like I said, we're going to do the old fashioned first. So we are actually just going to build this right in our glass. So you're going to grab your rocks glass, and we are going to start with our bitters. So go ahead and open up these bitter bottles. This is just a classic Angostura herbal bitter that you'll see with most old fashions. And then you can also play with your bitters too when you want to, if you're doing other cocktails. So what we're going to do is you are just going to take the little cap, and we're just going to dump a little bit out into the cap, not too much. And then that's going to go right into our glass. Perfect. Okay, the next thing we're going to use is we're going to use our cranberry juice. Now we're going to measure out our cranberry juice. It's going to be 1 ounce of cranberry juice. If you guys notice when I'm making these cocktails, you would think I would start with the liquor first, but we always want to start with the least expensive ingredients first, or the smallest amount of ingredients. That way, while you're making your cocktail, if you mess up, you are not throwing away booze. Like we don't want to waste perfectly good alcohol. Okay, so 1 ounce of cranberry juice. There we go. And then we're going to do 2 ounces of our whiskey. Now, this is a rye whiskey that we're using. Old fashions can also come with just a bourbon or just an American whiskey or really any type of whiskey. Does anyone know, by the way, what the difference is between like a bourbon, a whiskey, and a rye?
I know bourbon is only in Kentucky, correct?
So that is a common misconception. So basically you have whiskey is basically like a giant umbrella. And then you have Scotch whiskey, you have Irish whiskey, you have Japanese whiskey, you have Australian whiskey, and then you have American whiskey. And then under American whiskey, you have bourbon and you have rye. So what bourbon, what it means to be a bourbon is that whiskey has to be made up of 51% corn. So basically it's called the mash bill. It's basically all of the cereal grains. If you're thinking like you're going to have a big bowl of cereal and you were to put a couple different kinds of cereal in there, 51% of your cereal bowl would have to be corn. The rest can be barley, it can be wheat, it can be rye, as long as 51% of it is corn. Now, it does have to do a little bit with the location as well, but it only has to be in the United States. I know a lot of people think it's Kentucky. That's mostly just because the most concentrated area of bourbon distilleries are in Kentucky, in like the Lexington, area kind of place. But it's really just US soil. So if you think about it, bourbon can be made in Alaska, it can be made in Puerto Rico, it can be made in Guam. As long as it is technically US soil, it can be considered a bourbon. And then the only other thing is the aging process. So bourbon has to be aged in brand new charred oak barrel. So charred versus something like toasted, where they just do a little light toasting on the inside of the barrel, or they don't toast it at all. It has to be charred and it has to be brand new. So you'll see whiskeys that are like rum cast finish or sherry cast finish. You'll never see that with a bourbon. Bourbon has to be only the one new brand new oak barrel, and then it has to be aged for a minimum of 4 years. So the only difference between that and a rye is a rye has to be 51% rye. Everything else is the same. Yeah. Bourbon 51% corn, rye's 51% rye, which makes perfect sense. Okay, so now let's get our alcohol in here. We're going to do 2 ounces of our rye whiskey. There we go. And then we're going to add a little bit of our honey. So go ahead, cut that open. Our little honey packet there. Perfect. Now, you are going to use as much honey based on your preference. Some people like their old fashions not sweet at all. Some people like their old fashions a little bit more sweet. You already have a little bit of sweetness in here because of the cranberry. So I make sure that you're very careful how much honey you put in. And if you're wanting it to be a little bit more sweet, you put it in small increments. Because remember, we can always add more, but we can't take it away, right? If we make it too sweet, we got to throw it out. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of honey. Basically, if I was going to cut this into, I would say like fifths, I'm going to do 1/5, because you really don't need that much sweetness with an old fashioned. When I'm making a classic old fashioned, I'm only using about 1/4 ounce of syrup. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is just give it a nice little stir. The reason we're going to stir it without ice first is honey shocks in ice. So if you were to put the ice in here and then give it a stir, the honey would just kind of freeze, and then you would just get a bar spoon full of honey, and then it would be your cocktail would be off. So we're going to give it a nice little stir, kind of let that honey combine, and then we'll add some ice. We'll give it a nice little stir, and then we'll add our oranges, and we'll have a lovely cranberry old fashioned. So give it a little stir just until that honey's all nice and combined. You get your bitters in there, and you got your cranberry juice. And once you feel like your honey is all in there, see, my honey's already wanting to stick to my spoon a little bit, but luckily we know that we don't add ice first. Okay, now we're gonna add some ice. Now with old fashions, you can use just regular rocks glasses, or if you want to be the really fancy type, you can use the big ice cubes. I'm sure you guys have seen them, like the spheres or the cubes. Definitely pull those out for the old fashioned. Those are not only beautiful, they actually do serve a purpose. Okay, so once you've got your ice in here, you're gonna give it a nice little stir. Whoop, let me do it this way so it's not so loud. It's still just as loud. So the purpose actually of those large ice cubes are not only just to be beautiful, but they actually dilute faster because they have so much mass. They're going to dilute a lot slower than something like a smaller ice cube when you have multiple ice cubes. So when you're doing stirred cocktails that you really want to taste the booze, that's when you use those big ice cubes. Okay, so we got this all nice and stirred. Let's add some orange. We're just going to take one of our dehydrated oranges here, and you can add one of the cinnamon sticks too if you want a little spice in there. So I've got my little orange and my cinnamon in there. Give that a nice little stir around so the cinnamon gets a little flavorful in there. Yes. Okay. Cheers, everyone.
And while we're
that's
tasting
delicious.
that, it looks like, okay, good. Okay, Linda's preparing a drink. I wanted to make sure everyone got their kits because it looks like a lot of us were just watching. So if you didn't get a kit, if you already used it, no shame. But if you didn't get one, message me privately. I just want to make sure you got what you signed up for.
I like Linda, I like your suggestion. Throw it out. No, you would definitely make it a double. Much better. I don't know what I was thinking. Of course you would throw it out. Of course you would just make it a double. I'm
You would
I'm so
recycle
silly.
it in your tummy.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. You would never throw it out. So did anyone have any questions? Or is anyone making them right now? How is it if you are making it right now?
I want to know the difference between the dehydrated orange and real orange. Is there any difference at all? Is it just for convenience that we had the dehydrated orange, or is there an advantage or a disadvantage to any of the fruit additions?
Yeah, so normally an old fashioned will actually come with just an orange peel, and then it'll get expressed over the glass. So you'll just get a little bit of that orange oil. So you don't need too much orange flavor. So the dehydrated oranges we just use because those are obviously better for shipping purposes, and because they're really more, it's not supposed to be a ingredient necessarily. It's really just supposed to be a garnish. So it's not supposed to incorporate like a whole lot of orange flavor. So the dehydrated works really well. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. It looks beautiful.
No problem. I have to wait. Yes, and I had told Abby earlier before you guys had jumped on. I did put my social media in the chat. So if any of you guys have any follow-up questions, you're making them later, you got the ingredients, or you're making them again, or you're just opening the kit, you can always reach out to me and I'm happy to walk you guys through them or help you out with anything I can. Okay, are we ready? Take like a 2-minute break. I'm just going to wash my tools and then we'll get started on the mistletoe mule. Awesome. Okay, let me go wash my spoon really fast.
In the meantime, anyone have any kind of personal examples of how well-being is impacting their lives or their employees' lives? Or what you're doing as an organization to kind of focus on that?
This is Brenda with Land O'Lakes, and well-being has been a big priority for us, and our organization is providing 12 free sessions of counseling on their own. So previous organizations at 6, this is 12, so that's great.
Well, CoachHub allows us to do events like this where we can have a nice little happy hour in the afternoon on a Thursday, which helps my well-being. So
Yeah, we're pushing to do this 12 times too, Brenda. So we're not quite there yet.
So I really like the novelty of this, but I'm wondering if that is something that we can consider for a coaching rollout. Like,
why not, right?
Right. Can we package it together so that it builds a different kind of excitement?
Give an onboarding
if this is
not
not
negotiation tactic.
Yeah, if this is not up everyone's alley, which is totally okay. We did one with coffee and our chocolate and cold brew. That was a really good event too that we did. That was during the morning hours and very tasty and good for, it was a cold brew. So it was like during the summer, it hit the spot there too. So
Clever, very clever. I'm impressed.
So someone was asking in the chat, what is the name of this cocktail again? So this is a cranberry old fashioned. If you were just to have a classic old fashioned, you would just have regular bourbon. You would have simple syrup or demerara syrup, and you would just have the bitters in it. So no cranberry juice and no honey. And then someone was asking, what type of bourbons do I recommend for old fashions? So a couple of brands that I really like, Elijah Craig is one. I wish I had a bottle, but I do not. Woodford Reserve is another very good one. Very, very classic. You can find this almost anywhere. There's another brand called Four Roses. They have a yellow label that's really kind of like a cocktail bourbon. So that one's really good for old fashions. Or if you want to go a little bit up, they've got, a single batch or a small batch that are a little bit more pricey, but they're all fantastic. Another one that is really good, Basil Hayden, which a lot of people probably know. This one's a very common one. Yeah, those are probably my top ones. Does anyone know any of those brands or have had old fashions with any of those brands before? Woodford. Okay, someone had what? Yeah, Woodford's a classic, great bourbon. You cannot go wrong with Woodford Reserve. Makers is another good one. Very classic with Makers as well. Those ones. Four Roses is a pretty classic one too. I think it's the oldest or second oldest bourbon distillery in Kentucky. And Basil Hayden's good. So Jack is actually a Tennessee whiskey, which is technically a bourbon, but we don't ever tell them that because they get really mad. The only difference between a Tennessee whiskey and a bourbon is after the bourbon, the Tennessee whiskey is coming off the still, they actually filter it with maple charcoal. So that is the only difference between Tennessee whiskey. And obviously it has to be made in Tennessee. Marketing is also obviously a little bit different. Okay, are you guys ready to make the mistletoe mule? I love a good Moscow mule. I know you guys like Moscow mules. Do you guys ever drink any other mules? If you guys don't know, you can absolutely make this cocktail. The most popular one is obviously the Moscow mule, which is a vodka base. For those who don't know, a Moscow mule is just vodka, ginger beer, and a little bit of lime juice. But you can use gin, which is called a London mule. You can use tequila, which is called a Mexican mule. You can use mezcal, which is still called a mezcal mule. You can use whiskey, which is called a Kentucky mule. They are all delicious. And then there's also rum, which is not called a mule. It's called a dark and stormy. But Moscow mules are fantastic and everybody loves them. So they're really great to make for parties and different things like that. And it's nice because you can really, customize them. So like if you wanted to set up, if you're doing a party, you can always just do like one gin bottle, one vodka bottle, a bunch of limes, and then a bunch of ginger beer. And then just a couple like fruit. People want to put fruit in it. It's a great setup. Okay, so we are, like I said, I am building this in my official Moscow Mule glass, my copper mug, but you can put a Moscow Mule in any glass. And we're actually going to start with the lime. What am I talking about? I just talked about not pouring the most expensive ingredients first, and there I go doing it. So we're going to start with our lime. We're going to cut it in half. We're only going to be using a 1/2 ounce, which will be about a 1/2 of a lime in here. We don't want it too citrusy. You just want a little bit in there, just enough to kind of give it a kiss. Okay, so we're just going to squeeze that right in our glass. Okay, and then we're going to add the vodka. So we're going to do 2 ounces of our vodka here. Moscow Mule is also really nice because, like I said, you can build them right in the glass. There's really like no muss, no fuss. You don't have to shake it. You don't need double the ice. It's just really, really easy. Okay, so we've got our vodka in there. We're going to add our ice, and then we're just going to top it with some ginger beer, and we're going to give it a little stir. That's it. We do have to garnish it with our candy canes, though. That's the fun part. And then obviously drinking. Okay, so that's some ice cubes in here. Perfect. And we're gonna grab some of our ginger beer. Now, a lot of people ask me about brands of ginger beer because I know there are so many. We have Fever Tree in this kit. Fever Tree is a great brand. There's also Gosling's is a very good one. Seagram's really doesn't do a bad job on their ginger beer. It kind of all depends on what you would like out of your ginger beer. Some are a little bit more spicy, some are a little bit more sweet. I really like Fever Tree just because it's very right in the middle, very classic, and I never really have a problem with anyone liking it or not liking it. Okay, so we're just gonna top it with some ginger beer. Yum, yum, yum. These are so light and refreshing. They are really perfect for any time of the year. So we're just going to give it a nice little stir, make sure all of those ingredients are combined. And then we're going to add our candy canes because we've got to have some kind of like holiday aspect to this, right? So whether you want to crush your candy canes up and want to add and sprinkle it on top, if you want to just stick a candy cane in there, I'm going to give it a little tap with my muddler over here. And I'm going to try to get some crushed ones so I can kind of sprinkle it on top. And then I think I'm just going to put a whole one in there too, because why not? Okay, I got some crushed candy canes in there. Woo! Oh, that looks so pretty. Okay, then I'm just gonna put a whole one in there too. This one's not broken, so I can use this one. Man, I haven't had a candy cane in years. I think since I was a kid. That's okay. There we go. We'll just use this one part since I broke it. That's okay. Give it a little stir. Yum, yum, yum. Okay. And there we go. Mistletoe mule. Cheers, everyone.
There was a question in the chat from Elizabeth.
Yes.
She wanted to know, do you ever put crushed candy cane on the rim?
Oh, definitely. Not for this type of cocktail. You would normally do that. You could do with like a dessert cocktail for candy cane and stuff like that. Another one, I'm trying to think, peppermint. I was trying to think about if you could do it with like, I mean, I'm sure you can really do anything, but you could probably do like crushed candy canes and some salt and do it on some type, like maybe a spicy margarita, because then you get the peppermint and you get the spicy margarita. But I would mostly say dessert cocktails would be something you could definitely use crushed candy canes on. I've seen many recipes. You know, you dip it in a little bit of chocolate or a little bit of cake frosting. Maybe you do an espresso martini. Maybe you do, you know, a chocolate martini. That would be delicious. Does anyone have any questions for me? They don't just have to be about these cocktails. They can be, you know, just something you've always wanted to ask a bartender, or, you know, brand recommendations. If you're looking for some gifts for some people, I'm happy to give suggestions. Or if you're traveling and you'd like some bar suggestions, absolutely feel free.
What's a go-to cocktail that maybe a lot of people don't know about, but that's easy for a lay person to make, bring to a party, and just impress everyone?
And what kind of, are you looking for like a punch style cocktail, or are you looking for
maybe something a
else?
little bit more like you would serve here?
Okay. That you can prep. Do you have a base spirit in mind that you're trying to go with?
Yeah, let's go with whiskey or bourbon.
Whiskey. I mean, honestly, you could easily batch an old fashioned and just put that in there. It's 3 ingredients. You just put the bitters, a little bit of sugar in there, and the bourbon, and you can just pour it over ice once you get to the party, and wham bam, done.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How about vodka?
Vodka. Let me think. I would, if I was going to do a vodka, bring an easy vodka to a party. What would I do? I mean, I don't want to say Moscow Mule, because then you have to carry all the ginger beer and that can be a pain. Like, you want to have only one thing you have to carry, kind of, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would almost do a punch, would probably be easiest with vodka, where you just put kind of everything in there. And then maybe you bring like, you just have the punch pre-made and you bring like some club soda or some champagne. And you just throw that in. So it gives a little bit of bubbles, but not too much. But yeah, I would look up some, I'm sure that I have some holiday, I do a lot of holiday cocktails on my social media, a lot of recipes. So I believe at least last year, I believe I have I probably have at least one vodka punch on there.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. What would be a good, oh, okay, yeah. What would be a good festive holiday punch that's not too sweet? So it's really going to base on, what you kind of want to go with. I really like, the easiest way I could say to make a punch is think of something like a sangria and kind of go off that. Cranberry juice, pomegranate juice. It's really festive, for the holidays. Just add a little bit of, apple juice, whatever kind of base spirit would probably go. You could do tequila, you could do rum, you could do gin, vodka. Tea is another one to add in that's very festive if you want to do like a black tea or a chai tea. And that's pretty easy to add in, especially if you don't want it, too boozy. And then, all you have to do is just kind of pre-batch that, just throw some, fruit in there, some garnishes, and then just add, a little bit of champagne, a little bit of soda, ginger ale, ginger beer, and you got nice bubbly little punch. Someone was asking, what is the most technically difficult drink to make? So there is a cocktail called a Ramos Gin Fizz. Is anyone into baking or doing like souffles? Or not macaroons. The egg white, what's the egg white one? Meringues.
Yes. Not me.
Okay.
But that's the meringue.
Gotcha. So this cocktail is basically like making one of those in a like glass form. So the cocktail has cream and it has egg whites in it, and you have to shake it for a very long time so that you create this head of the cocktail. And then at the very end of the cocktail, you add soda water so that the head of the cocktail that you've made with the egg and the cream and everything actually lifts out of the glass about this much out of the glass on its own. And it is supposed to stay holding just like, you would see a souffle kind of. And they're very delicious, but they are a little bit difficult to make it. If you ever travel to a bar and you see it on the menu, I highly suggest getting it, because it is rare to catch it on a menu. And as I say, if it's not on a menu, it's not necessarily something I would suggest ordering at every bar. But if it is on a menu, that means they are prepared to make one. They are anticipating to make one. They have all the things they need to make one, which is why you should definitely order it and at least try it once.
What's it called? I want to Google it.
It's called a Ramos Gin Fizz. Ramos Gin
Ooh.
Fizz with two Z's. And you'll be able, if you Google it, you'll see a lot of videos and you'll see what I'm talking about, them lifting it out of the glass. It's one of those things that bartenders, we like to do a lot of videos of, because it's very impressive, Good clickbait. Oh yes. So if you guys, I do on my social media, and it's on my Instagram and on my TikTok, I have a holiday gift guide that I have put together. I also have everything on there on Amazon that's, kind of already listed. I've got it kind of broken down like, this is for like a new bartender. This is for the home bartender. This is for the whiskey lover, for like the tropical lover. And I'm going to be adding to it as well. So definitely check that out if you're looking for any gifts for anyone that is alcohol bar related.
I've already joined your Facebook group, so thanks.
Not on Facebook too often. So Instagram, TikTok. Instagram and TikTok are really the best places if you're not on the TikTok. Totally understandable. But yeah, the Instagram's the best one. I do the YouTube as well, but it's like we're still getting there. It's a lot. Just two of them is a lot. And then they want me on YouTube, and then they want me doing this and that. I can barely handle just the two. Okay, we've got just like a few minutes left. If anyone has any last minute questions that they would like to ask before we head out.
Thank you so much. This is great.
You're welcome.
We'll come for a visit when we're in Phoenix.
Yes, please.
definitely.
Yeah. And make sure you message me and tell me like you guys are coming in and you guys had a class with me, because I love, being able to like connect with you guys, because some people are a little nervous about like telling me that they were at a class, and they'll like message me later. I'm like, you should have told me. Okay, thank you guys so much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Please feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoy those cocktails.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank
This is
you.
wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.